This is a CBS News special report on the California primaries. Here is Walter Cronkite.
Good evening. The polls have just closed in California's presidential primary, and a special CBS News survey of voters leaving the polling places indicates that Senator Robert F. Kennedy is leading solidly in the Democratic race with almost 50% of the vote. He's ahead of Senator Eugene McCarthy by about 6 to 10 percentage points. Governor Ronald Reagan, of course, is unopposed on the Republican presidential ballot, but a surprisingly tight race is developing in the primary for the Republican Senate nomination. The special CBS News survey shows incumbent Senator Thomas Kuchel locked in a neck-and-neck battle with conservative Mac Rafferty, with each of them getting just under 50%. And in the South Dakota primary, Senator Kennedy won easily over a slate running under President Johnson's name and pledged to native son Vice President Hubert Humphrey, and also over the slate supporting Senator Eugene McCarthy, running third. Now for direct results on the big battle in California, let's switch to the Kennedy and the McCarthy headquarters. First, Roger Mudd at the Kennedy headquarters.
Walter, this bedlam that you hear now is the result of your announcing that Kennedy is running with just under 50% of the vote. We've just begun to start here, and obviously the mood is a lot different than it was a week ago in Oregon. Good crowd here in the embassy room. Back over my left shoulder is Pierre Salinger in a little dark room, a dark corner, counting ballots, and obviously a happy face. Last week he was saying this is going to be a long night. There's a blue blower band over here that's playing when the Saints go marching in. The senator is on his way into the hotel. He spent the day in Malibu, and obviously he's got better news tonight than he had a week ago.
Now to David Dick at McCarthy headquarters.
Just a little while ago, they opened the doors of the Beverly Hilton Grand Ballroom, and the crowd pushed in carrying McCarthy signs, wearing McCarthy hats, the girls wearing McCarthy campaign dresses, and plenty of balloons to go around, red, white, and blue. This crowd tonight seems apprehensive. It has heard the reports of the polls showing McCarthy trailing Kennedy, but the McCarthy supporters keep coming in with anticipation and with hope. David?
We'll be back in less than half an hour over most of these stations with a special report on the California primary. Now let's get direct reports from the Kennedy and McCarthy headquarters in California. First, Roger Mudd. What's the mood of the Kennedy people out there, Roger?
The only other thing they need here, Walter, is for Don Drysdale to pitch his 6th straight shutout for the Los Angeles Dodgers. We've got all the enthusiasm here that failed to ignite after Oregon. Jumping, shouting, clapping, snake lines, and Congo chains. And if Kennedy's predicted victory margin holds at 49 or 50%, the adrenaline will be pumping tonight. Roger Mudd, CBS News, Los Angeles.
And now to McCarthy headquarters. David Shoemaker. How would you describe the mood there, David?
Well, Walter, the celebration is, let us say, tentative. They're still hoping that somehow the momentum that McCarthy was building in the last 4 days of his campaign might yet pay off. But McCarthy's supporters, especially his younger supporters, have been around too long now to really believe that. The feeling here is that they ran a good race, but not good enough. The guess that there was just too little time and too little money to make the Oregon victory pay off in California. David Shoemaker at the McCarthy headquarters.
Well, as we said a moment ago, the count may be rather slow from California tonight. The voting out there offers unusual complexities, not only in the manner of counting this year for the first time, but in the very process of balloting. CBS News correspondent Mike Wallace at our studios here can perhaps give us a little explanation of that voting and the way it's being tallied.
The actual vote tabulation, Walter, is going to be extremely slow tonight in California. A large part of the state, including the 7,000 precincts in Los Angeles County, are using new automated voting equipment where the ballots are counted by computers. Now, although on the face of it, that would seem to indicate a faster count, the fact is that the new voting system is going to be slower in the count. After the polls close, the ballots must be shipped by truck from the precinct to the computer center. In Los Angeles, that means that ballot boxes from 7,000 precincts have to be trucked to a computer center in downtown Los Angeles and then fed into the computers one at a time, one precinct at a time, until all 7,000 precincts have been counted. However, in spite of the slow count, and the count is going to be slow throughout the entire state, it's possible for us at CBS News to provide an estimate of the final outcome soon after the polls close, and here's how that CBS News estimate works. After researching past voting information for every precinct in California, we chose a representative sample of 89 precincts, which together represent closely the way the state votes as a whole. As soon as returns are available from those 89 precincts, they're phoned to us here at CBS News election headquarters, where they're processed, and an estimate of the final statewide outcome is made. Thus, we can report quite clearly on how the race is likely to end up. We can also categorize each of those 89 precincts by where they are and what kind of voters live in them, giving us the ability to analyze the vote by areas, by income groups, and by ethnic breakdowns. And my colleague Joseph Benty will be reporting the results of that analysis later in the broadcast. Walter?
And we'll be back in a moment with more on Campaign 68, the California primary. A slow count in the California primary, crucial to both Senators McCarthy and Kennedy, and there is still less than 1% of the vote counted. At this point, I think we ought to bring up some of the major questions raised in this California campaign, and we'll put them to the correspondents who've been covering this campaign throughout. First, Roger Mudd. Roger, how important is a victory in California to Senator Kennedy, the man you've been covering, his future?
Walter, you can't believe how important it is to him. He's said if he loses here, or has indicated if he loses here, he'll drop out. It does not look like he'll lose here, and if he goes over 50%, which is a distinct possibility tonight, it will give him momentum that he lost in Oregon and that he never picked up in Indiana. That was a marginal win, but this would give him an impetus that could, at least for the time being, hold off Hubert Humphrey until he got to Chicago. It's crucial for him.
Roger, at the moment, according to that CBS poll of those leaving the polling place, he's going to come out with a victory there. But if he does not, what about this threat to possibly withdraw from the race if he were defeated in California? Think he'd carry that out?
Well, that was a strange statement he gave at the Los Angeles airport Wednesday after Oregon. He said he would abide by the results. He never said flatly he would drop out. That was the widely held assumption. If he drops out, it would mean that, in effect, he would be handing the nomination to Hubert Humphrey. So it is profitable to speculate that even if he loses tonight, it is not automatic that he would drop out. If he stays in, he is contributing to holding off the nomination going to Humphrey. So I don't look for an automatic dropout if Mr. Kennedy loses tonight.
McCarthy people might debate that point, that if he dropped out, it would automatically be handed to Humphrey. What about that, David Shoemaker? You've been with the McCarthy campaign from the cold winds of New Hampshire out there to the balmy California.
It's a little too early in the evening yet for nostalgia, I think, Walter. Walter, Senator McCarthy has been in the position all along, an enviable one, really, for a politician. No one expected him to do very well any place, and so almost any showing is a moral victory, I guess, of some sort. But it's getting pretty late in the primary races now to count moral victories. He did have to win here to generate the kind of momentum he was going to need if he was going to start to break loose those delegates. This undoubtedly is a setback.
What do you think he'll do if the final result shows he's lost in California?
Walter, I'm sure he'll do what he said he's going to do all along, and that is stay in it right through the convention. And he'll make another try there. He points out whenever he can that he is the Democrat still in the polls who run strongest against a Republican candidate. And he will try to emphasize that. He also, according to other polls, is everyone's second choice. So it is not inconceivable that if Robert Kennedy goes in against Hubert Humphrey and is able to, let's say, shake him but not knock him off, that it could yet fall to Eugene McCarthy.
How's McCarthy going after those delegates? What can he say to them now after the campaigns in the primaries?
Well, Walter, I think he says just what I said the poll showed. That is that he's the strongest Democrat against a Republican nominee. He feels that these are practical politicians. They want to win. He thinks, too, that the delegate count is of people who favor Humphrey but are not pledged to him, that is, not pledged to Humphrey in blood, and that they might come away. Meanwhile, his young supporters are going to mount a sort of nationwide canvass, New Hampshire but on a larger scale, hoping to make McCarthy what one of the young people called a folk hero, and to see if the combination of the two efforts, McCarthy's and the young people's effort, can't yet pull this one out for him.
Thank you, gentlemen. 2% of the vote in California. We have Kennedy with 40% of the vote, Senator McCarthy's slate with 46% of the vote, and a slate for Thomas Lynch, the Attorney General, the highest elected Democratic official in California, who leads an organization slate officially unpledged, but basically for Humphrey, it is believed, majority for Humphrey, with only 13%. We have a call here from the vote profile analysis at CBS for Senator Kennedy, that Senator Kennedy will win in California when all of the votes have been counted, based on our sample precincts and the results in those precincts projected to the state as a whole. Senator Kennedy will be the victor in California. We believe that the final totals will be Kennedy 48%, Senator McCarthy 41%, and the slate of Thomas Lynch, the pro-Humphrey slate, primarily 11%. 48% for Kennedy, 41% for McCarthy, a 7% spread according to our first vote profile analysis projection of the final results in California. I'd like to go now back to our correspondents who we have standing by, and we're asking about the results of this race in California and the effect on the candidates. Martin Agronsky is there in our Washington studio, and he's been following Hubert Humphrey's campaign throughout. Martin, what do you think this result in California will mean to the Humphrey campaign?
Well, I think that they're going to be rather disappointed that Kennedy is winning as big as he appears to be winning. They would have been ecstatic, obviously, if there had been a standoff, and it hasn't come off. I think that they feel that they're still in a race. And I remember so clearly a couple of days ago flying with the vice president. I think we were going to Gettysburg, and talked to him about the prospects in California. He said he didn't in any sense count out Senator Kennedy, and that the way he felt about the whole prospect that he saw in the future was that he would believe that he'd have the nomination the day he got up there and made the acceptance speech.
Well, Martin, with Humphrey, with this result in California tonight, apparently of Senator Kennedy coming out strongly from the California race, how does Vice President Humphrey think that Kennedy could put together a serious threat to him?
Well, he doesn't really believe that practically it's going to be possible for Senator Kennedy to take away the delegates that Humphrey thinks that he has, and he feels he already has a sufficient number to win the nomination. Nevertheless, he doesn't count out the prospect that a bad turn in the war in Vietnam, or real trouble in the streets of these cities, a bad outbreak in the racial riots throughout the country, could turn adversely against him, that Senator Kennedy might well be able to exploit that he could conceivably start the kind of a popular movement that he could run into a bandwagon perhaps and still present a real threat. He simply will not count Senator Kennedy out.
Martin, has Vice President Humphrey expressed any possibility of putting together a coalition with the loser of the California race?
The Vice President's been very careful not to make any expression about that particular prospect, but certainly the Humphrey people have long felt that the best thing they could possibly do, the dream ticket as far as they're concerned, would be a ticket in which Senator Robert Kennedy would be Mr. Humphrey's running mate. Now, that has not been proposed. I don't intend to indicate that it has been in any way, but certainly it's what they think about very seriously. And there has also been proposals from some of Mr. Humphrey's closest Southern advisors and experts, and in fact, Governor Connolly of Texas and Senator Long of Louisiana have both made the observation that the ideal running mate for Mr. Humphrey could be Senator Edward Kennedy of Massachusetts rather than his brother, because of the animosity that Robert Kennedy arouses in the South.
Thank you, Martin. We'll be back in a moment with more on Campaign 68, the California primary.
Let's take a close look at a new padded bra by Playtex. It's the closest thing to you yet. See? Playtex put a new softer fiber inside. It's just like natural softness. stays soft. Can't shift, can't bunch up, even after machine washing. So it always stays soft and natural. It's the closest thing to you yet. You Playtex Softline Padded Bra.
That's the hard way to be firm and flatter. The easy way, the Firm and Flatter Lycra Girdle by Playtex. Firms and flatters as no other girdle can. The exclusive V-construction exercises two firming, flattering forces. These elastic V-bands lift your tummy in. These elastic bands keep your waistline thin. You're firmer, you're flatter in the Playtex Firm and Flatter Girdle made with Lycra.
CBS News vote profile analysis believes that by the time all of the votes are counted, and they've just begun counting in California tonight, Senator Kennedy will have won the California primary with 48% of the vote. Senator Eugene McCarthy's slate will have 41% of the vote, and a slate unpledged officially led by Tom Lynch, the state attorney general, 11% of the vote. Now let's return to Senator McCarthy's headquarters for a report from David Shoemaker. David?
Well, Walter, here they're analyzing just what went wrong, and I guess we could sum it up this way, that after Oregon was pulled out of the fire, there was just not time nor money enough to exploit the victory here. Scheduling in California was bad. Too much time was spent in the Los Angeles area, which McCarthy had no chance of carrying. The organization in California was spotty, effective some places, not so effective in others. There was not enough money available for the young people's canvass. They reached only about 30% of California's registered Democrats. And McCarthy's television, only a fourth of Kennedy's until the last days of the campaign, just didn't start early enough. Finally, California is a big state, and McCarthy just couldn't get their attention, particularly on a Memorial Day weekend. View from the ballroom now. David Dick is there with the McCarthy supporters.
Well, David, the mood of the crowd down here in the grand ballroom of the Beverly Hilton is quite different from the one in the Elks Club ballroom up in Portland, Oregon 1 week ago. Victory was in the air in Portland, Oregon, but here in Beverly Hills tonight there is uncertainty, and one thing that is missing is spontaneity. There's a conscious effort tonight to create excitement. As television star Carl Reiner told the crowd a little while ago, we're going to try desperately to make a long evening seem short. And he read some selected returns favorable to McCarthy, and the crowd snapped alive. So now there are acts up on the stage, Shelley Mann's band, TV star Pat Paulson, movie star Donna Reed, lots of balloons, and of course McCarthy signs, McCarthy dresses. But underneath it all, the concern that all is not well in Beverly Hills tonight. David?
Right, David. And Walter, we'll go back to you now, and I think Senator McCarthy will be here in just a few moments.
We'll come back when he does. David Shoemaker, let's swing over right now to the Kennedy headquarters for a report from Terry Drinkwater.
Walter, just like the television people, the Kennedy men have their own anchor control position. This is it. Back there in the crowd someplace, Pierre Salinger on the phone. He's running the show, getting returns from all over the state, and talking with the candidate who's upstairs in the hotel now in the Royal Suite, waiting like everyone else. Even with all the happy commotion, this is about as organized as a victory celebration can be. Television sets, cheers, chants, VIP treatment for everyone. People here are already congratulating each other. A fine example of the efficient Kennedy style in California. All of the candidates' closest advisors are wandering in and out, and at this point, they seem about as happy as they could possibly be.
One of those advisors is Theodore Sorensen, who is here backed up against a hotel fountain. Mr. Sorensen, if you'll accept the CBS projection that the senator will win in California by something around 50%, can we proceed from there and ask you why he did as well as he appears to be doing?
I think the returns in California, if your projection holds up, combined with the returns in South Dakota, demonstrate as nothing else could that Senator Kennedy's appeal is to all segments of the Democratic Party. I think the debate and his showing in the debate helped add impetus to these last few days of the California campaign.
Well, I thought the general feeling after the debate was that it was inconclusive. Is something change your mind about that?
The returns are changing my mind if they hold up, because As you pointed out earlier this evening, the undecided vote usually goes heavily against Senator Kennedy because he's already well known. If they haven't made up their minds for him already, they're not likely to make up their minds favorably. But I believe the debate, if we are getting around 50 or 48% of the vote, must have shifted a lot of undecided voters towards Senator Kennedy.
Well, everybody now agrees that this win is a great shot in the arm and is crucial, and he had to make it. But just what prospects are there that your man can go into Chicago strong enough to hold off Hubert Humphrey?
Prospects are very good now, Roger, if we win here in California. The next big test is New York. But that is Senator Kennedy's state. The at-large delegates will certainly be for Senator Kennedy, and the great bulk of the district delegates should be elected for Senator Kennedy. It's interesting to note that in the history of modern politics, no candidate ever started out on the first ballot in either convention with both New York and California and lost. And on the other hand, Vice President Humphrey ought to realize that no candidate ever started out and failed to get both California and New York and then went on to win the nomination.
Well,
so I think we're in good shape.
Great reader of history, Mr. Sorensen. But do you now expect that this win in California will result in a further delay of the big city politicians waiting? You're sweating out Mayor Daley, aren't you?
I think Mayor Daley and the others are properly going to wait until the convention itself. That's my best guess. Bob Kennedy has now demonstrated that he is the choice of rank-and-file Democrats all over the country. Since presidential primaries first began in 1912, in all but 2 instances, our party has nominated the man who did the best at the primary level. I think we're going to do that again this year.
Senator Kennedy had claimed earlier tonight that his victory in South Dakota over a slate pledged to President Johnson, but that had swung over to Vice President Humphrey in Humphrey's native state. That his victory there was a victory over Humphrey in the first straight confrontation, he claimed, since Humphrey had campaigned for votes in South Dakota, and he claimed that showed also that he would win in the convention. There are the South Dakota returns as you see them. Kennedy, the winner with 48%, Johnson slate, the Humphrey slate, that is 32%, and McCarthy 20%. We'll return in just a moment with more on Campaign 68, the California primary.
Campaign 68, the California primary, continues after this pause for station identification. Ed Sullivan invites you to share his 20th anniversary celebration this Sunday on CBS.
In California's important, perhaps crucial, Democratic presidential primary today, the vote profile analysis at CBS News indicates that Senator Kennedy's slate will win with now some 52% of the vote, an increase as more of our sample precincts have come in, lengthening his margin that we believe will be the final figure over that of the slate led by for Senator Eugene McCarthy of Minnesota with 38%. The slate for Attorney General Tom Lynch, which is believed to favor in large part perhaps Vice President Humphrey, some 10%. Governor Reagan, who was alone on the presidential slate from the Republican side, watched the returns tonight from his home in Sacramento. And CBS News correspondent Bill Stout is with him again, as he is so often. Bill, let's hear from you.
Good evening, Walter, the governor has been following the returns and listening, as all of us have, particularly to the Kuechel-Rafferty race, where the CBS figures give Max Rafferty an edge over Senator Kuechel. What do you think that means, Governor?
Well, I don't know. I know that it's going to be a close race, and there was no question. But in the polls, Max Rafferty was coming up in recent days. The question was whether that rise would continue and would reach the proper point at election time. Of course, my feeling is that in this race, regardless of which one wins, then the party better get behind them because we want to retain that seat for the Republicans.
Do you think it means anything about a conservative bent for the months ahead, for the convention, for the election?
Oh, I don't know. In this particular race in California, whether that one race could be taken as a trend, although I think there's greater evidence than that of a conservative trend. I think you only have to listen to what some of the Democratic candidates are saying Senator Kennedy, for example, he's been a little bit to the right of all of us in his campaign here in California.
I think he'd quarrel with that, but, the raw numbers are interesting at this point, early as it is. Kuechel and Rafferty between them have something like 28,000 votes counted. Your unopposed presidential favorite son Slate has 18,000, indicating more Republicans voted in that race than voted for you. Does that bother you at all?
Oh, not at all. I think everyone has to expect that. You look at the history of balloting in California, whether it's for a judge or anyone else, in our long, complicated ballot, people just have a tendency to not bother with an uncontested spot on the ballot. They let it go by, and I've been expecting that. A couple of times have suggested that it'd be nice if they did it some other way, but that's normal.
I understand from some of our people close to Richard Nixon that he and his advisors are beginning now to worry more about other people than Nelson Rockefeller. Do you think that means you? Are you thinking that way about Miami?
No, I'm exactly in the same position I've always been in. I would think that Mr. Nixon's mind is probably on the campaign that Governor Rockefeller is waging right now for delegates.
Thank you very much, Governor. Early in the evening, but we're beginning to think about the numbers already, Walter.
From its very beginning, this campaign 68 has been one which has defied the experts, is an understatement, an unpredictable sequence of political surprises. Here, briefly, is a look at some of the highlights so far.
I have decided to fight for and win the Republican nomination and election to the presidency of the United States.
I intend to enter the Democratic primaries in 4 states, Wisconsin, Oregon, California, and Nebraska.
I will test my ability to win and my ability to cope with the issues in the fires of the primaries and not just in the smoke-filled rooms of Miami.
I am a candidate for President of the United States, and so the first thing I would do as a President of the United States is to show the communist capitals that we are determined to stand with our servicemen, whether we had differences involved in the war or not.
If the overwhelming voice of the Republican Party at the convention said that we want Nelson Rockefeller to run for president against Lyndon Johnson, what would you say to that?
That's what you would call a draft, and that's what I don't think will happen, and that's what I told you I'd
if
face
it does
if it
happen,
came.
though.
If it came, then I'd face it.
Now, I've just informed the Republican governors by letter of my decision to withdraw as a candidate as President of the United States.
The big surprise of the first primary of Campaign 68 has been the strength of Senator Eugene McCarthy. In the Republican ballot, former Vice President Richard Nixon, the only active campaigner, ran far in front, even farther than expected.
I am announcing today my candidacy for the presidency of the United States.
I have decided today to reiterate unequivocally that I am not a candidate campaigning directly or indirectly for the presidency of the United States. I shall not seek, and I will not accept, the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
CBS News estimates that Richard Nixon will end up with 79% of the votes, Governor Reagan 11%, Stassen 5%, and Rockefeller on that write-in some 2%. CBS News estimates that the final returns will show Senator McCarthy with 55%, President Johnson 36%, and none of them 2%, Senator Kennedy 6% on the write-in, and that scattering for Humphrey.
I shall seek the nomination of the Democratic Party. Today I announce my active candidacy for the nomination by the Republican Party for the presidency of the United States.
Well, Senator Robert Kennedy has won the first primary test in his attempt to secure the Democratic nomination for the presidency.
Well, I just say that I never really accused Senator Kennedy of buying the election here, Roger. There may have been some who did, but I didn't do that. And the other point is we could appear together on television. We could save half the money anyway if we're worried about time and money.
And if we could get Vice President Humphrey.
long wait for the candidate, 4 hours since the polls closed. But now the winner, the Democratic California primary.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want to take can you hear this? Can you hear? You can't hear? Can you hear that? That's great. Can we hear from any of this? Let's see if we can we get something that works?
Hey! Hold it.
Just one moment. But we can't hear. Can you hear on any of these? Can you hear on that? Oh, that's nice. Can you hear? I want to first express my high regard to Don Drysdale. Who pitched his sixth straight shutout tonight. And I hope that we have as good fortune in our campaign. Could I express my appreciation to a number of people. First to Jess Unruh for all that he did, first getting me into this. And express my appreciation to him for his friendship and his help during this campaign, and for his continued perseverance and his effort, and for all of those who have been associated with him. I'll always be very grateful. And if I could also express my appreciation to a number of other people, if you just bear with me for a moment, I'd like to express my appreciation to Steve Smith, who was ruthless, but has been effective. And I just want to say how grateful I am to him, to his wife, my sister Jean, to my sister Pat, and to my mother, and to all of those other Kennedys who came and helped me. I want to express my gratitude to my dog Freckles, who's been maligned. I don't care what they... As Franklin Roosevelt said, I don't care what they say about me, but when they start to attack my dog. I'm not doing this in the order of importance, but I also want to thank my wife, Ethel. And her patience during this whole effort is fantastic. Thank you very much. Freckles has gone home to bed. He thought very early that we were going to win, so he retired. I also want to thank point out Tom Reese, who is here, who was an early supporter. And I want to thank a number of other people, if I may, all of those of you who worked so hard in this campaign, all of the students who worked across this state, the members of my delegation, or our delegation, who also worked so diligently and with such unselfishness across the state on my behalf and on behalf of this cause that we're involved in. I want to thank Cesar Chavez, who was here a little earlier. And Bert Corona, who also worked with him, and all of those Mexican Americans who were such supporters of mine. And Dolores Huerta, who is an old friend of mine and has worked with the union, to thank her and tell her how much I appreciate her coming tonight. We have certain obligations and responsibilities to our fellow citizens, which we've talked about during the course of this campaign, and I want to make it clear that if I'm elected President of the United States with your help, I intend to keep them. I want to also thank all my friends in the black community who made this campaign. Voting today, I think, really made a major difference for me. I want to express my appreciation to them. To my friend, if I may, Johnson is here. And to Rosie Greer, who said that he'd take care of anybody who didn't vote for me. In a kind way, because that's what we are in our country. Smile. And I want to also, if I may, just take a moment more of your time to express my appreciation to Paul Schrade, who from the UAW, who worked so hard, and all the other members of the labor organizations, the members of the labor union. And I'm very grateful to him and for what he's done and the effort that he's made on behalf of the working man here in the state of California. I'm very, very appreciative. I'm very grateful for the vote that I received and for all that all of you worked on behalf of in the agricultural areas of the state, as well as in the city. I think it indicates quite clearly, as well as in the suburbs, I think it indicates quite clearly what we can do here in the United States. The vote here in the state of California, the vote in the state of South Dakota. Here is the most urban state of any of the states of our union. South Dakota, the most rural state of any of the states of our union. We're able to win them both. I think that we can end the divisions within the United States. What I think is quite clear is that we can work together in the last analysis, and that what has been going on within the United States over the period of the last 3 years, the divisions, the violence, the disenchantment with our society, the divisions, whether it's between blacks and whites, between the poor and the more affluent, or between age groups, or on the war in Vietnam, that we can start to work together. We are a great country, and a selfish country, and a compassionate country. And I intend to make that my basis for running and over the period of the next few months. Ladies and gentlemen, if I can just take a moment more of your time, because everybody must be dying from the heat. But what I think all of these primaries have indicated, if I can just take a minute or 2 minutes more of your time. What all of these primaries have indicated, and all of the party caucuses have indicated, whether they occurred in Colorado or Idaho or Iowa, wherever they occurred, it was the people in the Democratic Party and the people in the United States want to change. And that change can come about only if those who are delegates in Chicago recognize the importance of what has happened here in the state of California, what has happened in South Dakota, what happened in New Hampshire, what happened across the rest of this country. The country wants to move in a different direction. We want to deal with our own problems within our own country, and we want peace in Vietnam. I congratulate Senator McCarthy and those who have been associated with him in their efforts that they have started in New Hampshire and carried through to the primary here in the state of California. The fact is that all of us are involved in this great effort, and it's a great effort not on behalf of the Democratic Party. It's a great effort on behalf of the United States, on behalf of our own people, on behalf of mankind all around the globe and the next generation. I would hope now that the California primary is finished, now that these primaries are over, that we could now concentrate on having a dialogue or a debate, I hope, between the Vice President and perhaps myself on what direction we want to go in the United States. What we're going to do in the rural areas of our country, what we're going to do for those who still suffer within the United States from hunger, what we're going to do around the rest of the globe, and whether we're going to continue the policies that have been so unsuccessful in Vietnam of American troops and American Marines carrying the major burden of that conflict. I do not want to, and I think we should move in a different direction. So I thank all of you who made this possible. All of the effort that you made, and all of the people whose names I haven't mentioned, but who did all of the work at the precinct level, who got out the vote, who did all of the effort, all of the effort that's been done. I was a campaign manager 8 years ago. I know what a difference that kind of an effort and that kind of commitment made. So I thank all of you. Mayor Yodi has just sent me a message that we've been here too long already. So, my thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago. That's my
Senator, do you have any mentally how are you going to counter Mr. Humphrey's and his background as far as the delegate votes? Just those You did turn it on. Oh, beautiful. Thank you very much. Here's a right on the letter. You get it all right?
You can do the same for me. Okay, listen. Hey, I want to hear really loud. Who's going to be the next president of the United States? Hey, here's a man. Listen to him. Kennedy, Kennedy, rah, rah, rah. Kennedy, Kennedy, rah, rah, rah. Kennedy, Kennedy, just for fun.
Right here. I don't know. I can't find out. What happened, you know? Somebody said he'd been shot. I'm not. Keep me plugged in. Keep me plugged in.
Please stay back. Everybody else, just please stay back. Just the doctor, come right here.
Let's roll some videotape on this out here, friends.
Would a doctor come right here? A doctor! We need a doctor right here. There's a microphone, please, immediately. At the end of our cable. Is there a doctor? Everybody, please stay back. Please stay back. We need a doctor here.
Is there a doctor in the house? Please, it's very important. We need a doctor. Is there a doctor?
Quiet! Quiet, please. Quiet, please. The best thing everybody can do here is in an orderly way leave. Would you please do that? Just in an orderly way, clear the room. Can we do that, please? Quiet, please. Best thing and the most helpful thing that everyone can do here is to leave the room in an orderly way. Now, will you please do that for us? Will you please do that? Will you move out quietly, please? We don't know what's happened, but all of this noise and confusion is not going to help. So will you please clear the room? Will you please clear the room in an orderly fashion? Thank you.
I'm with you.
Would everyone please clear the room? Otherwise, nothing can be done.
Stay with me. You stay right here.
Yeah, I'm trying to get more. Can't do anything. You can help to clear the room. There's an exit on this side of the room. Would you please
leave the room.
Fashion and leave the room.
Would you please leave the room? I'll go get another set of
I'm all right here. You just stay with me. Don't
Please.
Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, you can cooperate with the sympathies. Yeah, we've got a doctor. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a doctor now. Will you please clear the room and offer your prayers at this hour? Let us please clear the room. Your greatest help will be to clear this room. Will you please clear the room? Would everyone please clear the room? You can help us most by clearing the room, please. Everyone leave. Will you please clear this room so that we can get medical aid to the senator?